Have you ever stood for what's right even when the whole world stood against you? The story of Daniel is not just about lions or dreams. It is a story of unshakable faith in the midst of exile, danger, and political intrigue. Daniel was just a young man when his life was torn apart by war, but he would go on to become one of the most influential and faithful servants of God in history. Exiled from Jerusalem, a young man in a foreign empire. In 605 BC, the unthinkable happened. Jerusalem, the city of God, was invaded by the Babylonians under King Nebuchadnezzar. The temple was plundered, sacred objects stolen, and the brightest of Judah's youth were taken as captives. Among them was a young man named Daniel, of noble birth, intelligent, handsome, and full of potential. Taken hundreds of miles from home to the grand courts of Babylon, Daniel faced a culture shock like no other. He and his three companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were chosen to serve the king, and even had their names changed to reflect Babylonian gods: Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But despite the pressure to conform, Daniel resolved one thing in his heart. He would not defile himself. Not with food, not with idols, not with anything that dishonored his God. The test of food, a quiet stand of faith. In the palace, Daniel and his friends were offered the finest delicacies from the king's table: rich meat, exotic wines, food fit for royalty. But much of it had been sacrificed to idols. Eating it would mean violating their conscience and breaking God's law. Daniel respectfully asked for a different diet, vegetables and water, a risky request, but God gave him favor. After 10 days, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and stronger than any others. God blessed them with wisdom and understanding, and Daniel was given something more: the ability to interpret dreams and visions. Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Daniel speaks for God. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a troubling dream. A vision of a great statue made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, and a stone that shattered it all. The king demanded not just an interpretation, but that his advisors tell him what the dream was, or face death. No one could answer, except Daniel. Daniel and his friends prayed through the night. God revealed the mystery. Daniel went before the king, humble but bold. "The dream you saw," Daniel said, "was a revelation from the God of heaven. The statue represents the kingdoms of the earth, but in the days to come, God will establish a kingdom that shall never be destroyed." Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face. Daniel was elevated, made ruler over all Babylon's wise men. Yet Daniel never claimed the glory. He gave it all to God. The fiery furnace. Faith in the fire. But faith is not proven only by dreams. It's tested by fire. When Nebuchadnezzar built a massive golden statue and commanded all to bow, Daniel's three friends refused. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood firm. Even as the furnace roared, they declared, "Our God is able to deliver us. But even if he does not, we will not serve your gods." They were bound and thrown into the flames, but the fire did not consume them. The king looked into the furnace and saw not 3, but 4 men walking in the fire, the fourth like a son of the gods. They came out without a single hair singed. Nebuchadnezzar was shaken. "There is no God like theirs," he declared. Writing on the wall. A warning to a proud king. Years passed. Babylon's throne passed to Belshazzar, a king filled with arrogance. One night he held a lavish feast, drinking from the very cups stolen from the temple in Jerusalem, mocking the God of Israel. But then, a mysterious hand appeared writing words on the wall. "Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin." The party froze. No one could understand it. But Daniel, now an old man, was summoned. He stood before the king and declared, "You have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Your kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and Persians." That very night, the prophecy came true. Babylon fell. The lion's den, faith that doesn't flinch. Under King Darius of Persia, Daniel rose to power once more, but envy stirred in the hearts of the other officials. They tricked the king into passing a law: no one may pray to any god or man but the king for 30 days. Daniel did not flinch. He went to his room, opened the window toward Jerusalem, and prayed, just as he always had. He was arrested. The king, heartbroken but bound by the law, ordered Daniel to be thrown into a den of lions. All night the king fasted and mourned. At dawn he rushed to the den. "Daniel, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you?" And from the darkness a voice replied, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." Daniel was untouched. His enemies were punished. Darius issued a decree. "The God of Daniel is the living God, and his kingdom shall never be destroyed." Visions of the future. Daniel the prophet. In his later years, Daniel received powerful, sometimes terrifying visions. He saw beasts rising from the sea, symbols of kingdoms to come. He foresaw wars, empires, and the rise of a wicked ruler who would defy God. But he also saw hope. He saw the Ancient of Days seated on his throne. He saw one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven, receiving authority and glory and a kingdom that would never end. This vision pointed forward, not just to earthly empires, but to the coming of the Messiah. Though Daniel did not fully understand everything he saw, he remained faithful to the end, fasting, praying, and trusting in the sovereignty of God. The legacy of Daniel. Faith that endures. Daniel died in exile, never returning to his homeland. Yet his story would echo through generations. Jesus himself referred to Daniel's prophecies. His visions shaped the book of Revelation, and to this day, his courage inspires those who face persecution, temptation, and fear. Daniel was a man of integrity, prayer, and prophecy. He showed us that even in a foreign land, even under pagan kings, faith can thrive. He proved that God is sovereign, over kingdoms, over lions, over fire, and over history itself. A call to courage. If you were faced with the fire, if you were thrown into the den, would you stand like Daniel? The world may change, kingdoms may rise and fall, but the God of Daniel still reigns. And those who know their God, as Daniel once said, will be strong and do great exploits.